Shall we? Okay. Okay, everyone, let's get going. We're recording the webinar. I'm joined here by Jojo. Thank you, Jojo. Poor Jojo's lost her voice. She's not feeling well, so you're going to have to listen to me, I'm afraid, for the webcast. So if we go to the first slide, I just want to focus on the changes. So you can see me down on near the bottom right. My name is David Rutnam, Manager Industry Adoption. I have similar colleagues, Ronnie, who's based in Beijing, and then also covering the Americas and Asia Pac, we have Cecile and Valerie. They're not full-time in the role as I am, but they are giving their support there. So just to explain, I'm not going to cover the why and the what of NDC. I'm not going to explain, go into any details about what it is. And I apologize if you don't really know what it is. I'm more than happy to address that with you on a one-to-one, or we can set up a group call afterwards. But I would like to instead focus on what's happened with NDC over the last year, what changes, and then cover on the campaign. So it's an update on the program and then getting into the campaign. So we'll cover the update. We will look at the structure of the campaign, so the logistics, the dates, and the sort of completion rate, etc., what you're used to for other campaigns. And then I'll briefly touch on the questionnaire. So please post any questions that you have at any time. We'll keep an eye on it. And I hope to allow a good 15 minutes at least at the end for questions. So let's get straight in. You may be aware, but there have been changes within the NDC and One Order teams. Effectively, NDC and One Order are merging, and this is in line with Eric Leopold's sort of digital airline vision that we're working towards. And I think what we will see more and more over the next years or so is a kind of moving away from NDC and One Order as independent sort of concepts or projects, and moving towards that sort of digital, towards the digital airline as far as distribution is concerned. So Yannick Hoyles is now heading both NDC and One Order, and Sebastian Turan, who headed One Order, is now focusing on dynamic pricing. So that's the situation that we have now. So what's been happening with the with NDC and One Order? Last year, our target was that at a global level, 55% so airlines representing 55% of IATA member volumes would be NDC certified, and thanks to you, thanks to the airlines, we exceeded that. We got to 61%, so target made, and well done everyone. So we also established the NDC Leaderboard, and I'll come on to that in a bit, but just to say that our focus is moving away from individual entities becoming NDC certified. I mean, we will still support that. So for the airlines, for IT companies, for travel agents and TMCs, we will support them becoming certified, and we'll still work with them to do that. But now we're looking at volumes of transactions. And when I come to talking about the leaderboard, we'll see what's happening there. So what happened regarding the airlines? We now stand at 66 airlines as mentioned. These are the airlines that are live. You can, all of this information is on the NDC pages on IATA.org. If you haven't visited them recently or at all, I recommend doing so. You can see the certification registry, and you can drill down and see which of those airlines, if any of those airlines are in your country or area. You can see what they've done. You can see what version of the NDC schemas they've gone live with, and who they've partnered and when they went live. So there's a lot of information there that you can obtain. So I mentioned the NDC Leaderboard, and what we were aiming at from the beginning of 2018 was we recognized that a lot of agents were saying, yes, I'm hearing about NDC. There's a lot of buzz in the market, but where is it? I'm not seeing it. So we worked with these 21 airlines. They all agreed to become Leaderboard airlines, and they have agreed that 20% of their indirect transactions will be powered by NDC by 2020. Now, these airlines are significant because they account for 30% of IATA passengers carried. And again, if you want more information, get in touch with me. I can give you more information on them. We also have a number of IT providers that are live. We're seeing some very interesting solutions coming out there. And in addition to the three big GDS saying that they will, or they have indeed certified an NDC, we're seeing a lot of new IT providers, including startups, stepping into the NDC space. And I've actually met with several of them recently. For example, I met with Atris, and I've also met with Aaron Group, and I can tell you that what they're doing is quite interesting. It seems to me that the way that these IT companies are going is integrating traditional GDS content, because remember, we still have hundreds of airlines that aren't NDC capable. They're integrating that with NDC API content from the airline. So these are airlines making direct offers through these IT companies to the agents as well. So that seems to me the most sensible approach. And indeed, when you look at what the GDS are doing, they're working on something similar. And I think, as we'll see over the coming years, as more and more airlines start distributing through API, that you will have either a choice of booking GDS or booking via the airline's API content, or the airlines will start switching off the sort of traditional GDS content and move towards API solely. So as I mentioned, all three of the big GDS are live, and indeed recently in January I saw a demo of Travelport's solution. They're working with British Airways, and they're piloting with a number of agents in the UK on a solution. Sabre also recently announced a partnership, and we're expecting Amadeus to start piloting towards the end of the year, and I believe they are also working with British Airways on their pilot project. We have a number of travel agents, 20, including 6 TMCs. There's not really a drive for agents to become NDC certified. It would only really make sense if the travel agency or TMC has their own IT department and they're building their own sort of platform to connect to airlines. Most, as you're probably aware, are using IT providers or tools that they've been given or that they've contracted to in order to access that airline content. Jojo, you're keeping an eye on questions, are you? So we also have set up a number of working groups to look at working with agents and working with corporates. I think it's fair to say when we launched the project in 2013, we took a bit of a top-down approach. It was a bit of a sort of fait accompli when we presented NDC, and there was a quite negative reaction from a lot of travel agents, I think from the GDS as well, and from corporates. Corporate clients, or maybe there was indifference from corporates, but there was a lot of negativity from the agencies. We're addressing that. So what we've done is we've set up a global travel Management Executive Council, GTEC, and that's working with a lot of or a number of large travel management companies, and it's addressing the needs of the large travel management companies and travel agents in general. So one of the outcomes or outputs from their working is a reference architecture that addresses all of the processes in a travel agent's office, so things like back office, mid office, and we'll be working with them to refine that to make sure that the travel agent's needs are met by the airline NDC offerings. Similarly, we have a travel manager advisory group, and this is a number of large corporates, roughly around 20, I believe, that we've got together in a group, and we're working together with corporate clients to see what are their needs, what do they want or expect from their travel management company, and what can the airlines give them that would help their business. So we ran a propathon, which is like a hackathon, but it's actually, instead of getting programmers, it's about getting sort of the business side of it, and they come up with ideas that they would like to see implemented. We got roughly 20 ideas from the propathon, and now we're having a sort of second round with the TMAG in order to sort of scale that down to about 4 or 5 that we will take to the airlines and push them to implement. I've just got a question. So a very frequent query from travel agent associations is if the aggregators or IT developers will add costs to their sale structure. That is a very good question. I mean, we're not involved in the commercial side of things, but obviously there are costs involved. What we're seeing is that some of the IT providers are charging the agents in order to use their solutions. But I guess if there's no value in what they're offering, the agents won't sign up. And these IT providers are getting TMCs to sign up. I recently saw the Atris solution that Lufthansa City Centre are implementing, and that there is a cost involved in that. So yes, I would say there may well be costs for agents, but remember, if the agents aren't benefiting, they're not going to use it, and so the airlines, it's up to the airlines to give the agents remuneration, let's put it that way, for taking the NDC content. Unfortunately, as IATA, we are strictly neutral as far as the commercials go there. What is the difference between an aggregator and an IT provider? Okay, yes, sorry, I'm throwing these terms around. Really, it's one and the same thing. An aggregator, and we include the 3GDS, they are taking the content from many different airline suppliers and presenting that to the agents. By IT provider, really, that's the sort of developing the software. So really, effectively, they're one and the same thing. Are we okay? Yeah. Okay, let's move on. In addition to the working groups, we've set up a developers portal, and it's called AirTech Zone. And if you have not had a look at it, I recommend you go and have a look at it. It has details of upcoming implementation forums. So let me explain what these are. So all of the live NDC implementers, so that's those 66 airlines and the IT providers and those 20 odd TMCs, they can get together, and it's a forum to address sort of common issues and discuss best practices. So we are running these. The next one you can see is the 21st to 23rd of May, and it will be in Montreal. And I would encourage you, if you have any airlines or IT providers that are live in your region, to register for that if they haven't already. In addition, we're running hackathons. So we recently had, last week, we had a hackathon in Seattle, and I believe our next upcoming hackathon will be in June. And the great beauty of the hackathons is it demonstrates that NDC can be developed fairly quickly, because these, the developers have to develop some kind of solution over a short period of time. It's a great networking opportunity for developers to get together with the IT providers and airlines that would use it. In addition to this, there's implementation guides. You can get access to the NDC schemas. There's also testing sandboxes, so any developers can use the AirTech Zone in order to test as they're developing. And there's also a community forum where people can pose questions, technical questions, and they're addressed as a sort of IT community. I mentioned about the reference architecture. We also have a lot of publications on the website. Here's an example of an in-focus document. We've got a number of them. They're one-pagers, and they're addressing some of the key issues that developers have looked at, such as how do I deal with payments? What is an API? What are the differences between the versions of the schemas? And also, as I mentioned, the reference architecture has a description of that for the TMCs to look at. So there's a number of sort of topics or pain points that are addressed in those in-focus documents. And I would encourage you to point anyone who has any questions on NDC to go to the NDC pages on iata.org. So I mentioned about certification. So let me go in a bit more detail on that. So up to this year, we've had 3 levels of certification. I won't bother with level 1 or 2, but level 3, which virtually all entities that got certified on, covers offer and order management. So to describe that in today's terms, you can think of it as the shopping part. So it would be the agent making a request to the airline for content, the airline responding. It could be a seat map, it could be a seat on a flight, it could be to pay for excess baggage, whatever. And then order creation, order view. Hang on, there's a problem with the web cams. So order create an order view. So if you think of in today's terms, that's about creating the PNR, issuing the electronic ticket, or issuing the EMD. However, one of the complaints that we heard from a lot of agents is that airlines had implemented and achieved level 3 certification, but if they needed to make any changes after the booking was created, this was very difficult. They had to call the airline, or they had to go to the airline's website, so it's quite difficult. So we've introduced a new level 4, and that includes servicing. So that includes messaging to enable the agent to make changes, and also for the airline to notify the agent if any changes have had to be made in an involuntary situation. And just to remind you that offer and order, we're sort of looking to move away, and that's particularly with one order, to move away from airline specific records such as PNRs, electronic tickets, EMDs, to go more e-commerce, let's say, with offers and orders. But that's another day for to discuss that. So all of those 21 airlines that I mentioned that are in the leaderboard, they have committed to being at 20% capability by the end of 2020. They are also committed to being being level 4 and also NDC at scale. I'll come on to NDC at scale in a minute. It's a further level of certification, much higher than level 4. So here it is. So level 4 addresses the post-booking servicing. Now, one of the problems is that when an airline gets certified, in order to do this, they send the application and they also send some sample messages, and we validate those messages against the NDC schema. Really, all we're doing there is testing the technical integrity of the messages, but we're not really looking to see if they're doing what the airline is claiming they're doing, if they're supporting the use cases. So what NDC at scale does, it still will test those messages up to level 4 capability, but it also addresses other aspects, such as what about business processes? How do you deal with bugs? What do you do with any issues? What about help desk? How are you supporting agents in this? What about your test environment? So looking at and how do you onboard agents is another one. How do you sign up agents? So airlines have to explain this. They also have to show that they can support certain use cases. So, are you able to do shopping for a seat map, or are you able to do shopping for this, or are you able to create this order and this, and its various scenarios. So making sure that they support their use cases and capabilities. So there's 4 key aspects on NDC at scale, and as I mentioned, all of the NDC Leaderboard airlines need to be certified at NDC scale. So that will address a lot of the concerns that I've heard agents saying, such as airlines have rushed things through, they can't deal with volume. So, and hopefully this will enable a much smoother rollout of NDC to the market. So let's move on to this year, next year. So as I mentioned, up to 2017, we were focusing on individual airlines. 2017, the goal was 45 NDC certified airlines. As I mentioned, for 2018, the target was that airlines would be live, certified as live, covering 55%. That doesn't mean to say that they had 55%, but that they actually were live and they covered that. We're in that position, but now we are moving towards to drive that critical mass, and so the focus has moved from capability to volumes. We will continue to support the non-live airlines, which is why we're running the campaign to test their readiness, but we will be focusing more on those volumes, and that is something I think to bear in mind when you're speaking with the airlines that aren't live, is that we are expecting to see growth, and really it may be now, the time may be now for them to consider jumping on board and making sure they don't get left behind. So, as I mentioned, 21 leaderboard airlines aspiring to an industry target of at least 20% of their indirect sales from an NDC API by end of 2020. But we have an interim target for this year, and this is a Board of Governor target, and that is that those 21 airlines collectively will achieve 8% NDC sales. So, and that has to represent 20% of IATA passengers. So, in other words, airlines representing 20% of IATA passengers need to be at 8%. Now we have airlines representing 30%, so you can see we have a little bit of wiggle room there. But this is a challenge. I have heard people say, well, it's not much of a target, but trust me, it is difficult because there's a lot of time spent by airlines in order to onboard agents, because there's things like contractual considerations, all of this. So it is a challenging target, but we're confident we can make it. Right, let's speed up. In addition to this, I'm working with the Leaderboard Airlines on a CEO report, and it's looking at 4 aspects of their NDC capability. So one, do they have a roadmap in place, which I think most, if not all, do. They need to be certified at a level 3. That may well change to level 4 in the next report. And again, most of those, but bearing in mind that we are going to start retiring old version of the schemas, so a number of airlines will need to maintain their certification level if they want to keep green status. We will also measure their volumes, and just to advise how we're going to measure that, we have worked with the airlines to talk about how to track them. We are going to use DDS. So those airlines that have signed up for DDS will be setting a flag in their DDS feeds to say that that a transaction is NDC or not. So we will use that to measure them, and then there won't actually be a colouring on volumes. We've decided to remove that, but we will flag their percentage in the report. And then we also are going through with the capabilities analysis of the airlines. So all of those use cases that I mentioned they need for NDC at scale, we will discuss with them to see what they're going to have in place for this next report, which will be produced in time for the AGM in June. We will focus on what they will have in H1. So all of those use cases, if you're interested in finding out more, let me know afterwards. And again, I am not going, you'll be glad to know I'm not going to read any of this, just to say, and it will be in the presentation, obviously you'll have it, but we have here listed all of the key things that we'll be focusing on in the NDC team in 2019. So regarding events, I mentioned the Implementers Forum. Implementers Forum, as I said, is looking for those that are live, that have implemented NDC, to get together to share best practices and address any issues, but it's quite a technical forum. We also have the Air Business Travel Summit that will be coming up in June, which is more business related. So we'll be looking to get the IT providers, aggregators, airlines, travel agents that have gone live to come in and discuss, their solutions, their experiences, and it's more sort of a business oriented. We will continue with hackathons. I mentioned that the next one I believe we're going to have, it will be in June in Madrid. And also there are the working groups. So we've got the shop order board, and this is in line with what you've probably heard from the standards group. So shop order board is one of the working groups under Henry Coles, and they will be meeting regularly throughout the year in order to develop the standards. So for example, the next iteration of the standard has to contain the changes that are being brought about with the PSD2 changes in Europe that are going to apply regarding access to accounts and customer data security. So now we'll move on to the campaign. As Jojo can't speak, I will. This is the role of the regions in NDC this year. So I mentioned we have the 8% target for the board. This will be largely managed by the team in Geneva, but those airlines, you may well be called on to help, sort of certainly to facilitate any dialogue with the airlines in your areas, in order to work with those airlines. So we will produce 2 CEO reports. We're looking at that level 4 certification. The DDS tracking is another key thing that we will expect in place, and we'll do 2 roadmap checks that may well involve face-to-face meetings. In addition to that, we have been given a target. It's non-board, but to have 5 to 10 followers or non-live airlines that are NDC certified by the end of the year. And this is where the campaign will play a key role, because each region will have 1 or 2, and we have the opportunity to speak with airlines, find out their plans, and here encourage them to be certified. So this is a great opportunity for you to check what the airline situation is. We will be running a couple of it's not in this one. I don't know if we incorporated the slide on we did. Okay, so I'll come on to that in a bit. We are going to run a couple of webinars in the future, to educational webinars for the airline. So I encourage you to contact them either in the course of the campaign or before. If you're doing that later, get onto them in order to get onto onto those webinars. The campaign scope. You know, it's the usual. It's in line. It's very similar to what we ran last year. We're going to address, I don't know how many airlines, Jojo. 150 airlines. It's the
Tier 2 and Tier 3.
Sorry. Tier 2 and Tier 3 airlines. Jojo will share the scope with you. It'll be the 90% completion rate, and we'll be running the campaign from effectively today until the end of June. And obviously, as soon as you get the materials, you can start contacting the airlines. So, yeah, I mentioned the scope as not in is those non-certified Tier 2, Tier 3 airlines. We are running 2 educationals. So module 1 will be on NDC basics, module 2, how to get started with your NDC project. Those are the dates, and I believe Jojo will send out the invitations. And are you sending it directly to IATA people, and then they forward it on? So it will be your responsibility, or your opportunity, I should say. I don't want to put pressure to pass that information on to your airlines. Again, a lot of information. I encourage you either to, if you haven't, to check the NDC pages on IATA.org, or if you can pass that information to the airlines. There are a lot of answers. There's change readiness guides. I mentioned the in-focus documents. They can get the certification registry, and they also have access to the AirTech zone. So, and of course, your local, myself, I'm covering Europe, Middle East, Africa. We've got Ronnie, who's covering North Asia, and we've got Valerie and Cecile covering the Americas and Asia Pac. So make sure to make the most of the resources there. So that's everything on the campaign. I'll just briefly go through the questionnaire, and then I'll hand back to you for questions. If we have any. Yeah. That's fine. Okay, we've got one. So question: if an agent can connect directly with an airline, what would the purpose of the aggregators be? Well, that's a very good question, Attila. And that's a good point. Some agents are building their own solutions, or building their own platforms to connect to the airlines. And yes, for them, there wouldn't really be any need for any aggregation. But remember, the vast majority of travel agents, and including big TMCs, don't do their own IT development. They depend on those aggregators, IT providers to connect, and they don't want to build that. They're there to provide travel services. They're not there as an IT company. So there are very few. You saw there's 20 that are developing, but certainly from an OTA, if you're an online agent or something, it might make sense to develop your own platform, and I think that's why we have 66 IT providers that are NDC certified. There's a lot of companies seeing an opportunity to get in there and grab that sort of aggregation role. And I think, I'm seeing some quite interesting developments out there.
Yep.
Okay. So the questionnaire, Jojo, shall I?
Yes.
Any other questions? So. I'll go briefly through the questionnaire, and just to say it's changed very little from last year, and what the work you do is great, not just in us being able to see what the airlines' plans are for the coming year or next year, but it's great because we've now benchmarked about 3 or 4 years of data, and we can compare what they've been saying over the years, and that is really invaluable to us to providing information. So we're seeing at an industry level how attitudes are changing and what the airlines are doing, and indeed I have the report from 2018, and if anyone wants to see that report, I'll quite willingly share it. So you know the usual score here. So the way and of course on the survey, which is online, if the airline, you fork off if you, sorry, that may sound bad, but you go in a different direction. If the airline says yes, you're asked one set of questions. If the airline says they're not interested, then we go to a different set. So we ask, why aren't you interested? What are, and try and get a little information before we go. And if they say they don't know, then really effectively it's a no. So for those that answer yes, you're going to go down question 5. Those no will go off to question 17. So we're, what is your airline planning on doing shop offer order servicing? I really would be surprised if anyone who's planning on implementing NDC is not doing level 4, because effectively you're saying, well, I'll enable you to book and create an order, but you won't be able to change it, which doesn't make sense. Again, you go down, what are the benefits? I think these are pretty self-explanatory. As I mentioned, if you do need to refresh on an educational, well, we do have those webinars coming up, but I'm happy to do one-on-ones or one with a group if you would like it that way on the educational. Where does the airline stand? So these are airlines that are planning on are looking at NDC. So have they got a team assigned? Have they got resources? Have they got a business case built? So you can check here what their answers are. When are they planning to go live? Who are they planning to connect with? So that could be online travel agents, that could be somebody like an Expedia or a Travelocity. Meta searches, so that's Skyscanner, Kayak, for example. Travel management companies, so I mentioned Hog Robinson Group, HRG, or Click Travel, or content aggregators, so that's the current GDS, or it could even be a new entrant such as Fairlogics, JRT Technologies, Atris, etc. Number 12 is key. So something to bear in mind is that when an airline goes live with NDC, it's effectively taking those transactions out of the BSP. So today, when you make a booking through a travel agent, they're connected to the GDS. The GDS reports the transaction to the DPC, and therefore goes through the BSP. But when the airline is making the offer, creating the order, and taking payment, that transaction by default doesn't go through. And of course, we're very keen for airlines to continue using the BSP. So this will be a key question, because we want to address with any airlines that say no, why, or don't know why. And if they say yes, then we want to make sure they have the full full number of options available to them. Ideally, they'll use IFG, but if not, then there is an NDC link solution available. So again, I think the questions are fairly explanatory. And then now we get to what's stopping the airline from going live. So again, why are they not? Probably a lot of airlines are waiting, or maybe they don't have resources. But it would be good to get these the key information. Where can IATA support? That's another thing. It's worth just to point out. We have NDC training, so we've got a number of ITDI courses that cover NDC, and indeed we've had a number of airlines sign up. And next month, for example, in mid-May, we're going to be training 41 salespeople for SAS in Stockholm. So it's a great opportunity for airlines to make use of those trainings. We can either do classroom in one of the IATA hubs, or we can do it on site. And in addition to that, we offer consulting as well. So we've run a number of consulting, most recently with Royal Air Maroc, but also we've had consulting projects with SAS and with Aeroflot. And since we did the consulting with Aeroflot, they became NDC certified, and they're now one of the leaderboard airlines, and they're quite strongly supporting NDC. So that is a great success project initiated from IATA Moscow office. Again, the resources, as I've mentioned, lots and lots of information on the website, so they can go on, they can download lots of documentation, and of course there are the human resources such as myself that are there to support them. And again, on the technology, if they need any support there, we can help them through that consulting. So we've got another couple of projects that we haven't, they're not signed, so I can't really go into the names of them, but we are going to be helping another couple of airlines in order to build their business case and their RFP design. And I think that is everything I've covered. I'll go back to the questions if there are any. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and of course, appreciate all your support in this campaign and in previous campaigns in delivering the results. And of course, I'm looking forward to working with you over the next couple of months. So I'll give some time for some questions, and then by all means